Last time, on Twisted, the girls had an awkward, nervous breakfast as they prepared themselves for what's to come. Abby didn't get much sleep the night before. She couldn't get Layla and Gordon off her mind. Abby kept an eye on Layla as the morning went by. She wondered what she thought of her after last night. Was it possible that Layla didn't notice what Abby had done, trying to greet Gordon with open arms? Finally, Andrea interrupted all conversations and told everyone it was time to go. The bus ride was silent, as the girls were all lost in their own thoughts. The only conversation was Andrea showing Nina how to use the pistol. Abby overheard their conversation and heard Andrea telling Nina that the bullets in the gun were blanks. When they arrived in town, the bus pulled up across the street from Driftwood Antiques. Andrea tells everyone to be in and out within 3 minutes, and that she will be waiting outside with the bus running. Andrea gave a few last words of encouragement before the girls got off the bus. Emily held open the door as the girls entered the store. Miss Driftwood was just about to greet the girls when Nina rushed up on her and pointed the gun right in her face. It took Miss Driftwood a moment to process what was going on. She couldn't believe what was happening. Abby was in charge of getting the money from the register. As she stepped up to it, she noticed Nina falter. She began to have second thoughts and started to lower the gun down. Jessie began to get upset. She believed the other girls were letting her down. She had really looked forward to doing this heist. Jessie ended up snatching the gun out of Nina's hand. She told Miss Driftwood to stay still and told the other girls to hurry up. As the girls began gathering up the money and the jewelry from the cases, Miss Driftwood suddenly grabbed her chest and cried out in pain. Then she hit the floor, still clutching her chest. She had stopped moving. Jessie kneeled down beside her. She stared into her face, then picked up the old woman's wrist. She searched for a pulse, then finally laid her arm back down gently. Jessie looked up at the girls and shook her head. Miss Driftwood had had a heart attack and was now dead. After the heist, the girls sat at the house discussing what had happened and what to do now. Nina wanted to go to the town police right away, but Andrea told her no. They had to regroup and come up with a plan. Everyone, including Andrea, was in a panic now. Nina seemed to be more upset than anybody. Abby tried to comfort her, but didn't really know what to say. As they talked, Andrea began to think hard. She began to say that she wasn't even in the store, so she really doesn't know what happened. The girls quickly stopped her and told her that she was just as guilty as any of them. Andrea was the leader and set up the whole thing. The girls began arguing and fighting with Andrea. Layla finally tells Andrea to come off with the joke, that it's gone too far. Andrea reminded them that it wasn't a joke, and Miss Driftwood really was dead. Andrea began to put on her coat. She told the girls she was going over to the next house to call the police, but the girls quickly protested. They all realized that they couldn't trust Andrea anymore. As she tried to go out the door, Jessie grabbed her by her arms and held her. Now the girls began to argue with each other about what to do with Andrea. Layla finally convinced Jessie to let Andrea go. Andrea tells the girls she will give them all time to relax and think things over. She believed that the girls would calm down and realize that they had no choice but to let Andrea go to the cops. Andrea tells them that they will all meet back up later after they've had time to themselves. Abby grabbed Nina and walked her upstairs to their room. Abby continued to try to comfort Nina as they sat in the room with Layla. Abby kept insisting that everything was still a joke, but Jessie entered the room and continued denying that it was a joke. Nina finally claims to feel a little better and leaves the room with Jessie, leaving Abby and Layla alone in their room. Just as Abby began to lay down and get comfortable, Layla tells her that they need to have a talk about Gordon. Layla asked Abby if there was anything going on between them. Abby claims that she doesn't know what Layla is talking about. Layla reminded her about the other night when Gordon came to see her. Abby tried to avoid direct eye contact with Layla. Eventually, Layla warned Abby to stay away from Gordon, but Abby didn't appreciate being threatened by her. She began to stand up to Layla and refused to back down. Layla didn't expect the outburst of anger from Abby and ended up leaving the room. After she was gone, Abby stared into the mirror and tried to calm herself, until a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Gabriella. Abby was shocked to see her. She told Gabriella that she wasn't allowed to be in the house. Gabriella told her not to worry, that she wouldn't embarrass her in front of her sorority friends. She told Abby she was there for a different reason. But when Abby turned away from the mirror, Gabriella was gone. Abby began repeating the word broken to herself. She picked up a lipstick and started applying it to her lips, eventually moving it in big, wide circles, covering her face with lipstick. She stared into the mirror, admiring her work as she continued to spread the blood-red lipstick all around her mouth and her face. Chapter 13.
The thing to remember is, Jessie said, staring straight ahead at the tall green weeds that blanketed the dune, no matter what that idiot Andrea says, we're all in this together. Nina leaned her head against the back of the rickety old porch swing and stared straight up at the sky. Black clouds were rolling in above the ocean, covering the sun and bringing a wet chill to the afternoon air. Looks like it's gonna storm, Nina said quietly. She looked around the large porch that stretched the length of the house. The screens were all torn or missing. There wouldn't be much protection from the rain back here. I'm glad you've calmed down, Jessie said, watching a group of sparrows hopping around on the sand under the tall weeds. Talking to you helped a lot, Nina said. Jessie wasn't such a bad person, she decided. She was weird, but she had a certain honesty about her. She was what she was, nothing more or less, and that was refreshing compared to a lot of other girls Nina knew, with their hang-ups and disguises and phony poses. What's going to happen? She asked, looking over to Jessie. Do you think Andrea will go to the police? For some strange reason, Jessie laughed. No, I don't, she said. She was watching a tall, gray tern pecking at the sparrow's wings with its long beak, trying to chase them away. There was a lot of chirping and rustling of the tall weeds as the unhappy sparrows made their escape. I wouldn't worry about Andrea. Jessie was being very mysterious. Nina frowned, watching the tern strut about, enjoying its territorial victory. Then maybe we'll go home this afternoon, she said. Nope, we can't do that, Jessie said. She picked a stone up off the porch and heaved it at the tern. It missed by a mile. The strutting bird pretended not to notice. The driver took the bus and left until tomorrow night. He had another job on South Shore this evening. You mean we're prisoners here? The panic slipped back into Nina's voice. Jessie laughed again. I guess. Why did she keep laughing like that, Nina wondered. What was so funny? She watched Jessie throw another pebble at the tern. Maybe we should go in, Nina said. It's getting real dark. It's really going to pour. I'm starving, Jessie said. We forgot about lunch. Nina looked at her. How could you think about eating after this morning? I'm a growing girl, Jessie said, smiling at her warmly. Let's go down to the kitchen and... A loud noise nearby caused Jessie to stop. She had started to climb to her feet, but the surprise of the noise sent her sprawling back onto the porch swing. The swing creaked under her weight and hit the back of the porch. That was a gunshot, Jessie cried. What? Nina's mouth dropped open, her lips forming a wide O of fear. A gun? The color returned to Jessie's face. She shook her head as if scolding herself, and laughed again. Whew, that scared me. But it's nothing, Jessie said. Duck hunters, probably. Across the dune. It's duck season, you know. Oh, right. Nina took a deep breath. Of course. Duck hunters. She shivered. Let's go in. That wind is so cold. Shh. Jessie raised an arm to hold her back. Nina, look, Jessie whispered. She pointed toward the tall weeds at the edge of the dune. What is it? Nina whispered back. But she quickly saw what Jessie was pointing at. Someone was running through the weeds, bent low, running at full speed. It was a man. At first she thought it was an old man, since he was bent over. Then she realized that a bent-up old man wouldn't be running that fast. Who on earth? Jessie whispered, still holding on to Nina. Nina stared at the running figure. The black clouds shut out all the sunlight now. It was nearly as dark as night, an eerie darkness, thick grays overlapping dense, somber greens. But even in the heavy darkness of the approaching storm, Nina recognized the mysterious runner. Oh, good Lord, she cried. It's Gordon. What? You know him? Jessie cried. They didn't have to whisper. The wind was strong enough to drown out their voices. Well, yes, I do, Nina said, standing up. It's Gordon, Layla's boyfriend. What is he doing here? And why is he running like that? Jessie pulled her broad shoulders up into a shrug. Weird, she said, and gave Nina a half smile. She looked at her watch, a big, clunky jogger's watch. Hey, 3:00. Time to go in and face the music. She laughed as if she had just made a real clever joke. Nina frowned. What's so funny, she thought. She opened the screen door and stepped in quickly, glad to be in from the approaching storm. But she knew that the old house held no safety or protection for her, and no escape from the horrors of the morning. The panic returned to the pit of her stomach as she walked quickly up to the living room and to the meeting. Who let the fire die down? Well, as you keep reminding us, you were here all day, Ruby, Emily scolded. You could have tended the fire. She raised a wad of tissues to her nose. She was catching a cold. I stayed upstairs, Ruby answered, shrugging. Besides, no one told me to take charge of the fire. Ruby, it's only common sense, Emily started, but a sneeze interrupted her. Without saying a word, Rebecca strode quickly over to the fireplace, picked up a handful of kindling, and tossed it onto the dying red embers. She found the long wooden matches in a container on the mantel, and bent down to light the kindling and revive the fire. We can't start arguing over silly things like the fire, she said, her little voice sounding hoarse and tired. We have more important things to decide. She's right, Ruby agreed quickly. I think we all should go with Andrea to the nearest house. We could phone the police, and then phone for rides to get us. Layla, Nina called across the room. Layla looked up. Did you know that Gordon? Layla raised her finger to her lips to hush Nina, and quickly looked away. A loud rumble of thunder startled them all. It was followed by a powerful rush of wind, and the drumming of large raindrops against the window. Somebody, close the window, Emily cried. Why don't you do it? Jessie said. Why don't you? You're closest, Ruby said nastily. Abby suddenly felt quite sick. These weren't the same girls who had come out to the house the day before. These weren't the sophisticated sorority sisters she had hoped to be sharing an adventure with. They all looked terrible, and they all were acting like a bunch of whiny 4-year-olds. She raised a hand to her chin. It was still a little sore from all the rubbing she had to do to remove the lipstick. Her whole face felt raw and tingly. Of all the silly things. She looked over at Layla, who was sitting on the floor near the fireplace. Her hair was unbrushed, and the back of her sweater was untucked. Even Layla has fallen apart, Abby thought. Broken. Do I have to do everything? Rebecca cried, reaching up her long arms to pull down the rain-spotted window. We've got to get out of here, Nina said, holding the sides of her armchair tightly. Do you want to go out in this? Emily said, gesturing to the window. The rain was pounding the ground, swirled by the strong winds, accompanied by long roars of thunder. The next house is at least a mile away. No, Abby said quietly, retreating back into her chair. The lights flickered. Nina and Rebecca shrieked. First thing we have to do, Layla said, getting up and walking over to the fire to warm her hands, is lighten up. Rebecca picked up a large birch log with some difficulty and heaved it into the fire, sending up a rush of flames and sparks. Layla jumped back as sparks flew from the fireplace. She gave Rebecca a dirty look, but Rebecca was busily picking up another log from the basket in the corner and didn't see her. The second thing we have to do is to realize that this is supposed to be torture time. That's what it's all about. Come on, Layla, Jessie interrupted, but Layla vehemently told her to shush. So, we can take our torture like good little girls, Layla continued, turning her back to the fire and staring at Abby for some reason. Like good little sorority girls, I mean. And then when Andrea tells us it was all a joke, we can tell each other how we knew it all along and congratulate ourselves for our courage and for making it as trigams. But it's not a joke, Jessie insisted, jumping to her feet, looking as if she might rush forward and attack Layla. Layla let out an exasperated sigh and rolled her eyes. Layla, Nina called quietly, her face buried in shadows. How can it be a joke? You're kidding yourself, Layla, Jessie said, walking to the window and staring out at the sheets of rain. You're lying to yourself. Sure, we all want it to be a joke, but we don't always get what we want. Let me finish what I started to say, Layla said, reaching behind her to tuck in her sweater. We either play along like we're supposed to, or we just tell Andrea that the game is over. We don't want to play anymore. Hey, Abby cried loudly. She had been silent the whole time, and everyone jumped at the sound of her voice. Where is Andrea? They all looked around the room, as if Andrea might be hiding somewhere watching them, but there was no sign of her. She's never late, Layla said, starting to pace back and forth in front of the fire. Sit down, Layla. You're making me nervous, Emily said crossly. Your face makes me feel nervous, Jessie cracked. Stop it! Stop it! Abby shouted. She realized immediately from the looks on their faces that she had reacted a little too violently. We've got to find Andrea, she said, forcing her voice down. She probably fell asleep in her room, Layla suggested. Come on, let's go get her. Layla headed to the stairway, and they all trooped behind her. A long streak of lightning crackled outside the window, and the lights dimmed and then slowly brightened. They went down the long hallway, the floorboards creaking beneath their shoes. Andrea's room was the last one on the left. The door was closed. Layla knocked softly, then harder. Andrea? Andrea, wake up. Silence. Open the door, Nina cried impatiently. Jessie pushed her way forward, grabbed the big glass doorknob, and turned it. She pushed the door open, and they all began to step inside. The lamp on the table bed cast dim yellow light over the large bedroom. "Andrea?" Jessie called. "Oh no. No. Please, no." First, they saw her white stockinged feet, lying on the floor, pointing straight up. Then they saw the dark pool of blood. Their screams and cries echoed down the long, empty hallway. No one moved. Finally, Jessie walked over to the bed and looked down. "She's been shot." More screams and cries. Abby grabbed onto Nina, trying desperately not to faint to the floor. Nina buried her head in Abby's sweater. "Is she dead?" Rebecca managed to whisper, looking away. "Yes," Jessie said, sounding more angry than upset. "Andrea's dead." The other girls began to push into the room. Stay back, Jessie warned. "We can't move anything. We can't touch anything. The police won't want anything in the room disturbed." Then she pushed herself away from the bed and looked up at Layla. "Still think this is a joke, Layla?" Chapter 14. "We've got to find a phone. There's got to be a phone somewhere in this house." Rebecca, her face a ghastly yellow in the dim lamplight of the living room, began dashing frantically from table to table, pushing aside vases and lamps, her long, slender hands searching every surface for a phone. "Rebecca, sit down," Layla called firmly, pointing to a vacant armchair by the fire. "Ouch!" Rebecca knocked a large glass ashtray off an end table. It bounced heavily off her foot and shattered. Rebecca raised her hands to pull her long red hair and let out a long, high-pitched shriek. "Rebecca," Layla called impatiently, "that isn't doing anyone any good. Try to think of everyone else. We can't start thinking only about ourselves. We're all really in this together. Every one of us." Ruby scowled, walked over quickly, and put an arm around Rebecca's waist. Talking to her softly, she led her back to the others and helped her sit down in the armchair by the fire. Abby stared down at the shattered ashtray beneath the end table. Broken, she thought. Broken. And it'll never be put back together again. The rain continued to batter the wide double windows behind them. Outside the windows, the tall weeds of the dune, unable to stand up to the powerful gust of wind, were crushed flat against the sand as if a steamroller had gone over them. The lights flickered again, causing several girls to gasp. Darkness, Abby thought. Soon we will all be cast into darkness. Jessie disappeared into the kitchen for a moment, then returned with a handful of long green candles. Just as she began to pass them out, the lights dimmed, darkened, and stayed dark. "No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it," Rebecca's little voice cried out. They could see her cover her face with her hands in the flickering firelight. Shadows danced and tossed about the room. "Rebecca, do you want to go upstairs and lie down?" Layla asked. Matches were struck by shaking hands. Circles of yellow candle light cast an eerie, old-fashioned glow. "No, please." Rebecca mistook Layla's offer as a threat. "Don't make me go up there." "I'm not making you go," Layla said softly. "I thought it might help you to lie down for a bit." "Not up there," Rebecca said in a shaky voice. "We have to call the police. We can't just leave Andrea lying up there," Emily said. Her parents, Nina said in between sobs. "I'm not going out into that storm," Ruby insisted. "It's safer than staying in here," Rebecca cried. "Anything is safer than staying in here. Poor Andrea." A howling gust of wind pushed hard against the windows. Their eyes all turned to see if the glass would stand up to it. The window shook, rattled, but didn't break. The wind continued to howl. The ceiling above their heads creaked. "Abby, why did you get up?" Layla called, raising her candle in front of her to see better. Abby stared into Layla's candle flame. She hadn't realized she had climbed off the sofa. "One of us is a killer," she said in a flat voice, a dead voice she didn't recognize. "Abby, please," Layla started softly. "No," Nina suddenly cried out through her sobs and hiccups. "One of us is a killer," Abby repeated in her emotionless new voice. "It's you, Jessie, isn't it?" "What?" Jessie cried. "Me? Why me?" "We all saw you threaten Andrea," Abby said in a flat, emotionless tone that made her words even more chilling. "Yes, that's right," Rebecca chimed in. "We did. You didn't want her to phone the police because you were the one who held the gun." "Now wait," Jessie started. "And you brought the gun back. I saw you. Abby added, staring into Jessie's startled face. I put the gun upstairs, Jessie said, the candle shaking in her hand. I didn't shoot Andrea or anyone else with it, Abby. How stupid can you be? It's loaded with blanks, remember? Abby shook her head. It was loaded with blanks, but bullets can be taken out and new ones put in. No, Nina cried, jumping to her feet. Jessie didn't do it. Gordon killed Andrea, she shouted, and then hiccuped loudly. What? Layla's voice rose several octaves. What did you say? What? Abby repeated, a second late. She felt her heart skip at the mention of Gordon's name. Gordon killed Andrea. Nina's candle went out. She made no attempt to relight it. She didn't even seem to notice. Who is Gordon? Emily asked. Gordon isn't here, Layla said quickly, ignoring Emily. What's wrong with you, Nina? Why would you say a thing like that? Gordon doesn't even know Andrea. Gordon is here, Layla, Nina insisted. You're lying. Jessie and I saw him. We saw him running over the dune behind the house. Another loud hiccup. First we heard a gunshot, Jessie added from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at Jessie. With the candle held in front of her face, she looked like a big jack-o'-lantern. We thought it was duck hunters, Jessie added quickly. But then we saw this guy, Gordon, running over the dune. He was bent very low, as if he didn't want to be seen. Who's Gordon? Emily repeated. Darkness, Abby thought. We're being cast into darkness. She blew out her candle and smiled. This is just silly, Layla said, trying hard not to lose control. Why would Gordon shoot Andrea? I told you, Gordon doesn't know Andrea. It had to be Jessie. Jessie was ready to kill Andrea right here in the living room. We all saw it. That's right, Abby agreed, a bit too loudly. You also told us Gordon wasn't here, Nina said to Layla, hiccuping. You lied about that, didn't you? Yes, but... Layla didn't finish her sentence. She froze. Everyone froze. The sounds they heard weren't from the blowing of the wind or the creaking of the old house. The sounds that interrupted them come from the front entranceway. Someone was banging on the door. Chapter 15. Don't answer the door. Please. Rebecca dropped her candle. It rolled across the carpet, still lit. Ruby grabbed it up quickly and handed it back to Rebecca. They heard the loud pounding again. 6 knocks, hard and insistent. We've got to answer the door, Jessie said, walking quickly toward the entrance. It's only the bus driver. I'm sure he's come back to drive us home. Yes, Nina cried, starting to follow Jessie. Of course it's the bus driver. The thought seemed to have chased away her hiccups. Thank God, we can get out of here. The small shimmering circle of light from Jessie's candle led the way to the entranceway. Almost to the front door, she turned and raised the candle above her head. Well, isn't anyone going to come with me? Are you all too chicken? The others followed reluctantly, circles of candlelight trembling before them as they entered the hallway and approached the front door. 4 more knocks, louder this time. Coming, we're coming, Jessie shouted. But she realized whoever was out there probably couldn't hear a thing over the pounding of the rain. She struggled with the top lock, turned the knob, and pulled open the heavy door. A burst of wind sent a wave of rainwater into the entranceway. Jessie backed away, too late. She was drenched. The girls raised their candles to see who was stepping through the doorway. Gordon! Abby cried. His dark hair was matted against his head. Water dripped down his face. His denim jacket was completely soaked through, as were his jeans. His black boots were mud-splattered and wet. I got caught in the storm, he said, shivering. He took a few steps away from the door, leaned forward, and shook himself like a dog, spraying water on them all. Then he stood up, a devilish grin spreading across his dripping wet face. Grab him, Nina cried. Don't let him get away. He killed Andrea. The grin died quickly on Gordon's face. He wiped his wet forehead with an even wetter hand and stared through the dim candlelight to see who was accusing him. A dark puddle of water circled him on the carpet. Who? Grab him, quick! He killed Andrea! Nina screamed. But no one wanted to touch him. He was too wet. Nina, what's the matter? Gordon asked, sounding confused. He shivered, wrapping his arms around his chest. Anyone spare a towel? Who is he? Emily asked. I'm Gordon, he told her. Why did you do it? Nina screamed, walking up close to him, looking up into his wet face. Gordon, I've known you for so long. How could you? Gordon looked down at her. He was at least a foot taller than she. How could I what? He asked. Why are you on my case, Nina? The light suddenly revived, flickered back to life. The hallway filled with yellow light. Nina and Gordon continued to stare at each other. What are you saying? That I killed somebody? Gordon was genuinely confused. Don't act so innocent, Jessie suddenly burst in, elbowing Nina out of the way to get up close to Gordon. We saw you running away. We heard the gunshot. Then we saw you running in a crouch. She stuck her round face up close to his, challenging him. I guess you always run like that, right? Well, Gordon shrugged sheepishly. He never was much of a talker. Shivering from the cold, struggling to keep the water from running down into his eyes, confronted by these shrill, screaming girls and their accusations, he was finding it difficult to talk at all. Why were you running like that, Gordon? Nina, hidden behind Jessie, asked quietly. I guess I didn't want anyone to see me, he said reluctantly. I knew it, Nina cried. Somebody, help! We've got to tie him up or something. Now, cool it, Nina, Gordon said, pushing Jessie out of the way so he could see her. Have you gone bonkers or something? I'm not confessing to any murder. I just said I didn't want anyone to see me leaving the house. You killed Andrea, Gordon, Nina cried. We saw you. Jessie and I saw you. You saw him shoot her? Emily asked, bewildered by the change in Nina's story. No, we saw him running, Jessie said impatiently. She moved back up to him. Why didn't you want anyone to see you leave the house? She asked, sounding tough, like a bad TV detective. Well, I guess... What were you doing here in the first place? Jessie asked. Coming so close, Gordon was forced to take a step back. He came to see me. Everyone turned to see who'd spoken these surprising words. Abby felt her face turning red. For a second, she wished the lights hadn't come back on. I admit it, she said, staring into Gordon's eyes. He snuck into my room last night. He followed me from the campus. He wanted to see me, to be with me. Isn't that right, Gordon? Gordon's face twisted in confusion. Abby, you shouldn't... It's okay, Abby said, feeling the heat that reddened her face course through her entire body. Gordon and I were together last night, she said, unblinking, staring hard into Gordon's eyes. Look back at me, Gordon. Look back at me with the same feeling I'm sending to you, Abby thought. But Gordon looked down at the wet carpet. He didn't want anyone to see him leave this afternoon because he didn't want to hurt my reputation. She turned away from Gordon and looked at the other girls defiantly, proudly, a triumphant smile on her dark lips. No, Abby. Gordon raised his hand, gesturing for her to stop. It's the truth, Abby said, her heart pounding with gladness, with real happiness. He was with me the whole time. He didn't kill Andrea. He didn't even... It's not the truth, Gordon shouted, water spraying off the shoulders of his denim jacket. He looked across the room at Layla and shrugged. Abby, please. I guess you're just trying to help me, but you might as well tell the truth. I am, Abby insisted. What was the matter with him? Didn't he know the truth? I came to see Layla, Gordon said, still looking at the carpet. I was with Layla all night. I didn't wake up until this afternoon. Then I tried to get away without anyone seeing me. Everyone looked at Layla, who nodded agreement. No, Abby insisted, grabbing Gordon's shoulder and pushing him back. Don't you know it's all broken? Everything's broken. Surprised by her push, Gordon stumbled backwards. He regained his balance by putting a hand up onto the wall. What? He asked. What did you say? I don't remember, Abby said. She really didn't remember. Suddenly, she felt very upset. Everything had been so nice, so right. Everything had been so clear to her. So why couldn't she remember what she had just said? Layla stared hard at Abby, reading the confusion on her face. Poor confused Abby, Layla thought. Poor Abby. She really believes what she's saying. Suddenly, Layla found herself trembling all over. Tears welled in her eyes. Poor Abby. Poor confused Abby. What's happening to me? Layla thought. Why do I feel so strange? Staring at Abby, she answered her own questions. In that instant, Layla realized that she still cared about her old friend a great deal. Abby was not a threat to her, she realized. Abby was in trouble. Abby and I were such good friends, she thought. We were like sisters. Surprised at her own emotions, at the strong feelings she still had for Abby, feelings she had held back for more than a year, Layla felt her anger lift, felt her guilt fade away. Poor Abby, she repeated to herself. Poor confused Abby. Someone isn't telling the truth here, Jessie said, interrupting Layla's thoughts. Jessie moved forward to take charge, giving Abby a strange look. She grabbed Gordon's arm and forced it behind him. Come on, up you go. We're locking you in a bedroom upstairs till we can get help. Gordon made no effort to resist. Fine, he said quietly. This is stupid, Layla cried, moving forward to pull Jessie away. But Gordon raised a hand to stop her. It's okay, he said. Look, I just came in to get dry. If you want to put me in some room, fine. I'm not going to fight you. But there's no reason, Layla started. A nice dry room sounds fine to me, Gordon said. I didn't shoot anybody. I've never held a gun in my life. I didn't do anything. So go ahead, take me upstairs. Lock me up. Just give me a towel, okay? And maybe a dry bathrobe or something. Gordon! Layla seemed positively furious that he was giving in to them. Jessie, still bending Gordon's arm behind his back, pushed him towards the steps. I'm locking him in an empty bedroom, she called down. No one knew what to say. They all stood in the entranceway for a few moments. Then they slowly began to drift back to the living room. Rebecca moved to tend to the fire, which had died to dull red embers. Layla walked up quickly to Abby, tenderly put a hand on her shoulder, and pulled her close, whispering in her ear, Abby, you and I should do some talking. About Gordon. Abby jerked herself out of Layla's grip. Her green cat eyes flared up as if on fire, and her dark lips formed a tight sneer. I want to talk to you too, Layla. Come up to my room. Now. Chapter 16. What's wrong with me? I can't stop crying. Nina pulled a bunch of tissues from the box Jessie held out to her. You're lucky, Jessie said, tossing the box onto the bed beside Nina. You can let out your emotions. What good is that? Nina asked, the tears beginning to fall down her swollen red cheeks again. Everyone just thinks I'm a baby. Jessie started to contradict her, but Nina shook her head and gestured for her not to say anything. The whole reason I wanted to join, to be a trigam, Nina said behind her wad of tissues, was to be sophisticated. You know, mature. And all I've done is cry like an infant. She tossed the wet tissues angrily down on the bed. I can't help it. I'm so upset. Jessie walked over to the crushed velvet armchair beside the closet and picked up her big book bag. She searched through it, pawing intently, until she found what she was looking for. She grinned as she pulled out a Three Musketeers bar. Big enough to share with a friend, Jessie said, tearing off the wrapper and tossing it on the floor. Want half? Nina moaned. I couldn't. Thanks. I just keep thinking about Andrea, lying there 2 doors down. That blood all over the floor. Uh-oh, here I go again. She reached for another handful of tissues as the loud, uncontrollable sobs resumed. Jessie took a big bite of the candy bar, then another. What can I say to calm you down? She said, chocolate all over her teeth. You know I didn't do it, don't you? I was with you the entire time. Yes, I know, Nina said through her tears. Well, we've got to remember you're not the only one who's in this mess. You're not responsible. We're all to blame for whatever's happened. Nina looked up at her, but didn't reply. So why do you want all the guilt on your shoulders? Jessie continued, taking another big bite of the candy bar. Why do you want to do all the crying for us? What are you accusing me of? Nina cried, sitting up quickly. I'm not crying because I want to take everyone's guilt. Who asked you to be my shrink anyway? Now wait, Jessie started. I'm crying because I'm upset, Nina shouted. Upset, upset. It's normal to cry when you're upset. Some terrible things have happened here. People are dead. It's normal to cry when people... Nina stopped suddenly and stared at Jessie. Her mouth dropped open. She looked surprised by her own thoughts. Wait a minute, Nina said slowly, her eyes narrowing. How come you're so calm, Jessie? I told you, Jessie said, setting down the remaining half of the candy bar on the dresser. Some people can let out their emotions. Some can't. You've been so calm through this whole thing, Nina continued, ignoring Jessie's feeble reply. You haven't cried. You haven't seemed frightened or upset. Not for more than a minute or two, anyway. Nina stared at Jessie. Don't you have any feelings? Are you so twisted that you don't care about people at all? Nina, that's not fair, Jessie said, crossing her arms in front of her chest. Now stop. But Nina wasn't finished. She had another thought. Maybe that isn't it at all, she said thoughtfully. Maybe there's another reason why you're so calm, Jessie. You know what? I think you know more about what's been going on this weekend than you're letting on. Jessie turned away and looked out the window. A mysterious smile spread over her face. You're out of your mind, she said quietly. Layla lifted the large green mug to her lips, took a long sip of the hot tea, and burned her mouth. She slammed the mug down on the kitchen table, startling a few of the other girls. I have to do something about Abby, she thought. But what? After Gordon had been safely locked upstairs, someone realized they hadn't eaten since breakfast. Rebecca hurried to the kitchen to make a pot of tea. Emily, still mostly in a daze, began opening cabinet doors, looking for some ingredients to make pancakes. The others had scattered all over the house. Several minutes later, the tea had been made and poured, but Emily was still staring into cabinets, unsuccessful in her quest, seemingly unable to come up with an alternate plan. What am I going to do? Layla thought. A dozen scenes rushed through her mind, ugly pictures, upsetting pictures of what had taken place in the last few hours. She saw Miss Driftwood in her shop. She saw the gun in Jessie's hand. She saw the old lady's face begin to twitch, saw her clutch her chest and fall. She saw Andrea's stocking feet, lying in a dark pool of blood, the blood soaking onto her white socks. Then she saw Gordon climbing into the bedroom window. She saw Abby rush forward to greet him, saw the look on Abby's face, the way she raised her arms to him. Abby was still in love with him, still crazy about him, still crazy. But how crazy? Crazy enough to think that Gordon might come back to her? She had to make sure that Abby knew the truth, for Abby's sake. 2 people were dead. For real? Were they really dead? Layla had been so certain that it had all been a sorority prank, so certain that it was all put on. But now, she just didn't know what to think. It was easier to think about Abby and Gordon. Layla took another long sip of tea, ignoring how hot it was. She felt empty and cold. She wanted to run upstairs to Gordon. He would know how to make her feel warm and comfortable. But Gordon was locked up in an empty bedroom. Those idiots. Layla's thoughts turned to anger. How can they be so stupid? I know Gordon. He looks rough, sure. He looks kind of punky, but he isn't really. He's a marshmallow, she thought. Why did he give in to them so easily? Why did he let himself be dragged up to that bedroom? Why didn't he fight them just a little? Because he's a marshmallow. He didn't kill Andrea. He couldn't kill anyone. Then who did? Was it Jessie? It could have been. Jessie had been so gung-ho about the whole adventure. Jessie wanted to carry the gun. Jessie wanted to commit the crime. Jessie was the least upset of any of them. In fact, Jessie wasn't upset at all. It was Jessie. She didn't want Andrea to call the police. But did she want to stop her badly enough to kill her? No, that was ridiculous. Jessie didn't kill Andrea. But then, who did? One of the other girls? I've got to stop these crazy thoughts, Layla told herself. She took one last gulp of tea, pushed her chair away from the table, and walked out of the kitchen. She realized she was shivering. The tea hadn't warmed her at all. Thunder rattled outside the front door. The rain, which had slowed for a while, picked up once again. She hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, listening to the rain, gathering her strength. Then slowly she began to climb. It was time to go up and have a chat with Abby.